Taiwan's fire agency reported as saying 4 people have been killed in the strongest quake to hit the island in a quarter of a century. Joining us now, Robert Lee from Bloomberg Intelligence. Robert, a pleasure to have you on the program. Bring us up to date with the developments on the ground.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. As you said in your intro, this is one of the largest earthquakes that's hit Taiwan in recent history. Having said that, just to give you a very brief geography lesson on the island of Taiwan, Taiwan is a very densely populated island, although the majority of the population lives on the periphery and mainly on the west coast. This earthquake hit on the east coast in a place called Hualien, which is a very beautiful but less populated and more rural area of the island. So in geographical terms, Hualien, or where the epicenter of the earthquake was just under 200 kilometers from Taipei, which is the capital of Taiwan. And therefore, the major damage seems to have been concentrated on the eastern side of the island, not in the capital. And also the major industrial and science parks within the island, I should say, where the likes of TSMC and its peers are located. Again, they're on that more densely populated west coast. There are well-developed protocols and procedures in place that are put in place to protect human life, first and foremost, but also to protect the buildings and assets. So they seem to have worked like clockwork. The buildings were evacuated, production was shut down. So I think the conclusion to all of that is, whilst there may be some production lasting a number of days, at this point it looks like the impact on the Taiwan food chain and wider global food chain is likely to be fairly limited based on where we are today on what we know so far.
You're talking about not having as much of a global ramification as some of the damage is still being expected or at least assessed. Is there a more shorter term ramification, though, when you look at TSMC in particular?
Again, based on limited information at the moment, I mean, these fabs of TSMC are built to be as earthquake proof as possible. So the buildings and the design of them themselves in sort of rubber buffers and other things that protect the equipment and protect the individuals that work within them. So I think if we were talking about a scenario where the epicenter was very close to one of these facilities, clearly the potential damage could be larger. But based on what we know so far, production was shut down, the procedures worked as they were supposed to, and whilst TSMC hasn't given a formal update, I think looking at the facts and taking a logical conclusion, the impact on their production is likely to be relatively minimal. And again, don't forget that Taiwan is an island that sits within the ring of fire, and whilst today's earthquake was larger than what they would normally expect, you know, earthquakes are of a frequent occurrence in Taiwan. So this is nothing substantially new, but obviously of larger magnitude than what we've seen in recent years.
It's interesting because it's coming, of course, at a time that we're talking as well about potentially U.S. production and U.S. kind of domesticity around the supply chain as well. We still have a little bit of the market reaction pointing to that risk sentiment. Robert, there's a lot going on in the chip space. The read-through from the TSMC story, which, by the way, closing down in the market by about 1.3%, I believe, in the Asian session. Is there a more market read-through? Why are markets in particular spooked if, as you point out, the implications might not be as severe?
Yeah, I mean, TSMC has traded off, but as you said, I mean, we're in the low single-digit range, and I think if we were seeing larger share price declines, you know, 5–10% would probably be indicative of wider concern on both their business. So we're not seeing that. I'd also say, just looking at technicals for a moment, you know, TSMC's share price has been hitting a key technical level recently, which has been struggling to break through. So you need to sort of see it in that context as well. But again, on fundamentals, I would say, based on everything we know at the moment, then there is unlikely to be a long-lasting impact on TSMC's production, neither impacting their business and probably the read across to the wider tech food chain and the likes of NVIDIA, etc., again, are likely to be more minimal based on the information we see at the moment.
All right, Robert Lee from Bloomberg Intelligence breaking down the impacts of the Taiwan earthquake and what it means for the global supply chain.